got to put the notifications out in the paper and so forth.
Is the meeting paused?
We are paused right now.
They're coming back.
Yeah, don't forget, you talked about a workshop of the people. That's what you guys said, you were going to do another workshop before the public hearing. That was decided in one of the last meetings.
We can't have public comment during the meeting. It's only at the beginning and the end.
No, I thought you paused the meeting.
You were paused.
That's the only reason.
Yeah, but
That's the only reason it's closed.
yeah, we're not going to open that back up until the end. Ross, we're trying to set the public hearing, or public comment session for the master plan for February 13th.
Make a motion, take a vote, and then we're ready to go.
Okay.
We just wanted to make sure that you're good with us and you think it's...
We didn't receive any other additional input from any of the neighboring communities, utility companies, or anyone, so.
No comment from outside.
No. And then after we do this as well, just to clarify, we are also going to send it out to Livingston County Planning for their review.
Yep.
Before we actually forward it to the board.
Right.
Understood.
Will that be before the 13th of February? The public?
After the public hearing.
Yeah, it's done.
After we had the public hearing.
After the public hearing, we'll step back, we'll evaluate, we'll see if there's anything necessary to change. At that time, once it's dialed in, we'll send it to the county. We can make the recommendation to the board concurrently, just send it over after the county review has been received.
Yeah, I would make the motion to hold a public hearing for the master plan at our next regular meeting in February.
I'll support that. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, Ross, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is our good old friend utility scale solar ordinance. And we do have, fortunately, our attorney with us today. Laura Genovese from Foster Swift, welcome.
Thank you.
We did have a meeting, Ross and Kurt and myself, Laura and someone else from Gibbles Webster yesterday to kind of go over this.
Parallel.
Colorado, I'm sorry. Got the wrong word. What is the, how do we proceed on this one now that we have the attorney? How do you want to do that?
Just a general introduction here. We'll basically go over the latest solar draft with Mateo as usual. If the planning commission has any questions or anything for the attorney specifically, then we can open that dialogue. After the fact, I mean, if we can, at the end, you can see how you're comfortable with what's in front of you, if we want to forward that forward you. There's a number of ways that we can do it, but
Maybe Laura can give us a roadmap about how we're going to go about doing this.
Sure. Well, and I'll introduce myself for those who don't know me. As the chair said, I'm Laura Genovese. I'm a partner at Foster Swift in the municipal group. We do a lot with solar, wind, and battery storage ordinances around the state. Primarily me and my partners, Mike Homier and Leslie Abdu. So we're glad to be here. We're not replacing the township's usual council. We're just coming in for this special project to help the planning commission and the township board with some of the legal parts of it, particularly with the new statute with PA 233, which is out there as well. I know the Planning Commission has spent a lot of time already on this, and with its planning consultant, not Gibbles Webster. I'm sorry. So it's okay. I had to get a little dig there. So you've got a draft here. I have been through the draft. I have a copy of the draft overlay map that was in the December packet, which is dated November 28th, 2023. So the one that I have is the one that's online on the township's website, if that's helpful. I'm not trying to start it back and forth, but it is on the December packet. That's the same one I have. And so I guess my thought is today, I think where if the Planning Commission wants me to speak about the statute, the PA 233, which doesn't take effect until November, which is the one that potentially, takes away local control over a lot of these items. I can give some thoughts on that. Overall, I don't plan to nitpick your draft ordinance because I think overall it's in really good shape, and I think you have a lot of good things in it. I think where I can particularly lend value is with possibly working in a sort of fix with PA 233 in terms of the proposed overlay. I said this on the call. Really, if if things can develop there, it's not excluding it. So as long as you can fit these requirements into those spots, you know, you're likely in good shape there. So I could babble on, but it might be helpful to field some questions.
I have a question. So, have you heard or guided any other townships to have separate ordinances for utility scale solar less than 50 megawatts and 50 megawatts or greater?
So-
Because the statute is just regulating that. So we
Correct.
could have, in theory, we could have tighter requirements if it's less than 50.
Yes, that is correct, and that is one option.
Okay.
What I've been doing, I'm working with a couple of townships at the same time on this, and one county who's doing it as well, is trying to figure out the easiest way to explain it, is kind of having an extra provision that would go after. So if you have your draft ordinance, which is, I think, called A, let's say it's section A here, utility scale solar energy facilities. You'd have all that, and it wouldn't be limited to just under 50, right? As for now, it would apply to everything. That part's important right now because also the law doesn't take effect until November 29th, 2024. So if you get applications before that, you would want them to fall under the restrictions that, you know, you've prepared now. Also, there is likely going to be, there's at least efforts to put a referendum on the statewide ballot in November of 2024. So there are petitions that are going to be circulated to try to get that on the ballot. So I have no crystal ball and no way to predict the likelihood of that passing, but that's another wrinkle that's potentially out there. So I'm reluctant to tell townships, you know, for 50 and above, just model the statute and don't do anything else. Because one, you might get an application before it takes effect, and two, who knows what's going to happen with it. That is all to say that the way I'm proposing to model it is to have a provision afterward that is then called like utility scale solar energy systems under PA 233. And what that basically says is, first it's date specific and it's megawatt nameplate capacity specific. So for example, it could say, on or after November 29th, 2024, if PA 233 of 2023 is in effect, then the following provisions apply to utility scale solar energy systems with a nameplate capacity of 50 megawatts or more. Here's where it gets a little creative. We then say, to the extent that these provisions, and these are going to be the statute provisions, right? The small setbacks, the higher, or you know, the 50-foot setbacks, the 25-foot height, the 55 dBA, a weighted scale. We say, to the extent these provisions conflict with the other provisions in the rest of your ordinance, then these provisions control as to such utility scale systems. And then it says this subsection does not apply if PA 233 does not take effect and does not apply to solar energy systems with a nameplate capacity of less than 50 megawatts. And then it goes in to reflect the statute. What that does though is first you don't actually have a separate ordinance, but it leaves in place for those facilities things that are not covered by the statute. Because the statute only covers for solar setbacks, fencing, height, noise, lighting, and arguably environmental regulations. It does not talk about where you can put them. It does not talk about decommissioning. It does not talk about insurance. It doesn't talk about green belts. It doesn't talk about drain tile. It doesn't talk about any of the other protections like the ones that you have in this draft. So our position at this time, realizing that this is new territory for every municipal lawyer who's working on these, because it hasn't taken effect yet, it hasn't been tested yet, is that having these additional requirements does not conflict with the statute, because the statute is silent about those. And there's case law in the marijuana context that if the statute doesn't talk about the items, then the municipality is still free to regulate them. So the way that we would structure it is not to have two completely separate ordinances, but to have what I kind of call the trigger provision that kicks in just those things that would make it compatible for the facilities it applies to if and when the act takes effect.
Very good. That makes sense. I like that. I like going down that path.
Yeah.
You know, and you put the date, if it applies, it doesn't apply, so we don't have to, because I was thinking, oh, you gotta hurry up and approve this one or pull this one out. You just have it right in the ordinance. It's gonna say,
There's no grant fund.
Right, we wanted to avoid anybody having to go back and amend depending on what happens in November.
yeah. And my second question was going to be, can we regulate the things that are not in the section 226.8, which are the setbacks and what you
Right.
said?
It's
So-
our position that you can, but recognize there's some uncertainty there
Yeah.
because this is untested. There's a lot of things in the statute that are open to interpretation, like, not to get on a soapbox, but who decides if it's a compatible ordinance? Does a developer just get to decide if we have a compatible ordinance? Does the MPSC? Likely, is it going to be a court? You know, there's a lot of open questions left by the way the statute was put together.
No, in there, it says, it goes through the process, if a developer wants to come in, they gotta notify our township, we have a meeting, and then the township supervisor needs to say, we have a compatible ordinance, and then we go on, and then if, say we deny it because they wanna apply to a location that's not in our overlay district, then they just, does that now kick it back to the Public Service Commission?
Arguably, yes, because there's language in the statute that basically says, to paraphrase, if they don't like your decision, they can still go to the MPSC.
So, but can we just not approve it without denying it?
No, because you have a time frame under the new statute, I think, to approve it.
Okay.
And if you don't take action within that time, then they could go to the
Could we-
MPSC.
So, but is there any other way that we could just like not accept their application because they didn't meet the requirements of our ordinance?
Yeah, and I think that's one, I can't imagine, I don't think there's any industry reps here who are going to argue with me. Sometimes at meetings there are, and that's great, because then we can kind of test those theories. But I can't imagine anyone reasonably taking the position that this statute takes away a township or any zoning authority's right to cite the location, to say where it can be. Otherwise, you could, put this up in what, residential, and commercial. I don't see any legislative intent of that. That's also something that's untested as of now, but that seems like a real stretch, and I really am not sure the industry folks would, it might depend on where it's allowed, and if they want to challenge the overlay district for other reasons, but let's ignore yours for a minute and just say we had a township where they said it's allowed in ag. Are you going to have a developer come and say, well, we want to put it in industrial, and therefore your ordinance isn't compatible? Well, the statute, again, doesn't speak to that at all. So how do you come away with a conclusion that it's not a compatible ordinance? That's what I would be arguing to a court, and likely will for somebody at some point in the next 12 to 24 months.
So say we approve this and we're coming up on November and it's going to be enacted, would it benefit our township to have a letter from you saying, we've reviewed your ordinance and it's compatible with the state law?
That's actually, you're the first one who's ever asked me that. We certainly would provide that.
But you will help Mateo to draft your suggestions into
Correct, yeah.
into the ordinance that we have here.
Yep, it wouldn't be taking apart what you've already done. It would just kind of be adding another provision to the end.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Now, we've also got a petition to add a piece to the Constitution that would undo Public Act 233.
And that's the kind of referendum that I was talking about, where there are petitions going out now. So I don't know how that turns out.
Plus, we also have a moratorium going on. And so I think as long as we're still working to get this done, I think our moratorium ends in April.
Yeah, and if I have a number of communities who have moratoria running out in these, next few months, and there's a really good basis to extend or even adopt a new moratorium now with the statute. I mean, to me, there's no better reason than the state changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game, right? It's like you've been working on this, you were working on it probably well before November, if I had to take a guess, and then this gets rushed through the legislature very quickly, and now it's a demand that basically you've got to change your ordinance or else you forfeit local control.
Yes, in your opinion, when we, in some cases where there's a court judgment, maybe there's judgment on the side of the developer to say, hey, there's a need for this. In our township, we've had experience with that. And there was a need for housing, right? So that it was, hey, you got to put these in Tyrone Township. But in this case, how would a developer prove that there's a demonstrated need for the
Yeah, that's
development, right?
It's a really good question, because what they're going to argue, right, is there's state level demands for a certain percentage of renewable energy by certain dates. The counter to that is, what is the demonstrated need for them in Tyrone Township? The flip to that is, well, if every township says there's no demonstrated need in our township, then we can't put it anywhere, and then there won't, you won't meet. So it's really, it hasn't been litigated. I don't know if or where that particular question will, because to my knowledge, no zoning authority has taken the position that we're going to, facially exclude it for there being no demonstrated need.
But because we're not excluding it, then that wouldn't be.
That wouldn't be the issue,
an issue for us.
right? So the issue, because right, they have to say, well, this is exclusionary. I say, well, how is it exclusionary? You can put it right here, you can put it right here, it might be, there are requirements for it, but there always are. This is a huge industry with a lot of money. It's not like it having to cost some money makes it exclusionary. These projects are expensive in a lot of aspects. So unless you're, if you put it there and you literally couldn't develop it there for whatever reason, it's, entirely wetlands that you can't put anything on, or something like that, where there's just no feasible way, then I think you're getting into territory where that's a little bit dangerous, right? If there's literally no way you could actually put it there, then you have excluded it. But if it could be built there, presuming that the property owner's consent, because again, there's no power of eminent domain to come in and put in a private solar system. So property owners have to consent and have to lease their land to do it. So they hold, that control as well.
What if you just minimize the cost effectiveness it would take for them to actually bring all of that equipment in, and then they don't get the ROI that they thought that they would get?
Yeah, I think you always have to have a rational basis for what you're requiring, right? I would caution against imposing things solely for the sake of increasing cost. Rather, I think the focus is on protecting the community, protecting the township's environment. So the things, that you do require that might have costs attached to them, have a solid basis. I mean, requiring a, decommissioning bond and things like that is important, because what if the developer goes bankrupt and there's not going to be anybody to take the panels out and restore the land? You've got to have money set aside for that. And that's where you've got the surety and a letter of credit, cash deposit, things like that in there. Drainage and stormwater requirements, right? Stormwater study, those are important. They may cost money, but the purpose of them is not to cost money. The purpose of them is to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. And I think that's always what has to drive your regulations.
In addition to what, the items to add maybe the first subset or section A, did you have a chance to look this
I
up?
did.
Do you have any comments for us on that?
I really didn't. A lot of these things are the types of regulations that many communities are adopting, so I didn't see anything that caused me any heartburn, so to speak. In fact, I think in a couple of places they're actually similar to what there's one I think that was similar to the statute's requirement, that might have been the noise level. I think, is it at 55?
55 is what they did, but that's also kind of a common average amongst other townships.
Right, so it's not way out there. So no, I didn't, and the height was 15 feet, statute's 25 feet, so it's not, compatible, but it didn't strike me as being problematic either.
We got a pretty good base to start.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you.
Is there anything you see that we need to add to that?
Yes.
I didn't do a sit-down side-by-side comparison with other ordinances, but just reading through it, you've got a lot of the basics. I can't remember if it might be toward the end where you've got your application requirements, because I think that's important, and that might be, oh yeah, your site plan approval and supporting materials, yeah, the detailed site plans. And I think you guys and your consultants have done a good job.
In regards to the battery storage, in our proposed draft ordinance here, we say we don't want any battery storage. But bill, I don't even know what to call it, 5120
Yeah.
or whatever, basically there's a whole other section on
Correct.
battery storage, so we would
Yeah.
not have a compatible ordinance
Correct.
for that.
Correct.
Now, is there a way to, I haven't read that one in much detail, but basically what we determined is that we don't have the proper emergency responses to deal with that, a fire or something with battery storage, so that's why we didn't allow it. But how can we protect ourselves from that?
Yeah, this is just, been another topic that just kind of sprang up, right? 5 years ago, nobody was obviously talking about battery storage, and now we're starting to get requests to have these ordinances because of the statute. So if you don't allow it, then they're just going to go to the MPSC, right? And then it's going to be subject to those requirements, which are very similar to the solar. I think it's identical setbacks as it is for solar. Same noise requirement, very, almost like I said, word for word, the same as the solar requirements. Or you could adopt an ordinance for battery storage that includes those things plus some additional protections. So if the cost of fire protection is a concern, then you could put in some regulations for that they have to have a safety plan, they have to provide education or, materials or some kind of resources, or even provide their own fire protection.
Yeah, okay. We could say they need an on-site fire department.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
So to piggyback off what you're saying, John, and this would be a question, so we do have language in here about required trainings. We do have language in here about that the applicant would need to provide special equipment to the emergency response teams
Yes.
if they deemed that equipment was necessary. Is that language contradictory to taking the position saying that we aren't going to allow battery storage because of these concerns, but in another part of it, we're saying, but if you give us this, this, and this, then we will allow it? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I'm
Is
just
it
scrolling at that
contradictory to do the two
as well.
things?
So you've got fire response, right, it goes to M. And that is for solar, correct? Yeah. So I guess I didn't read that as applying to battery storage.
And it doesn't specifically reference any specific, solar, wind, battery, that nature. But
Right.
again, what I'm trying to understand is if the battery prohibition is based on concerns about being able to respond to those. But we also have language saying, well,
For solar,
if you train, for solar, or if you provide this equipment, then you can do it. But that's,
Our batteries are a lot higher risk than solar. It sure seems like it from the things I've seen.
Yeah, the reality is they're not going to be outright prohibited because if you prohibit them, the FPSC is going to allow them.
So we have, in our solar ordinance, we say, under whatever, G, batteries, Q, all batteries, energy storage equipment, and accessory equipment are prohibited
Yes,
due to
you could.
environmental hazard and emergency response concerns. So,
So it takes.
I take it back, you should
Fire
change
response.
that.
We should change it?
Yeah, that part, you've got to, I guess, decide, because I kind of view battery storage as now a completely different issue than solar because they're treated separately under the statute.
Yeah, okay.
So I think if you're going to have battery storage, you're going to have a separate battery storage ordinance, like most likely.
okay.
But that would be part of the ordinance after the clause.
You could,
If this takes
you
effect
can
on.
public hearing it at the same time,
It'd
it's
be
probably going to
three-
be your own section.
It could be 3 ordinances, maybe, solar, energy storage, and wind.
Yeah.
And then each one of those would have the section at the end that say,
Yeah.
if this applies, follow this.
Exactly.
So right now, we're just working on our.
We're just working on solar.
We're working on solar.
But you're right, for the solar draft, I think it probably does make sense to pull that out, Mateo.
would it be because sometimes the storage system can be associated with the solar
Yeah,
fields themselves?
true.
Is it the position to say that battery storage is not permitted within the utility scale solar energy facility? And just stating that if you want to put a battery on the solar site, that's not okay, but the batteries as a standalone site is a
Right, would
different
require,
ordinance.
right, batteries on their own site would require, yeah, that makes sense as well, right? Because they might have just some battery component there, and we're saying no to that.
Would there be two separate ordinances then?
Well, if we went with wind.
Because right,
Right,
that's
if
some
you-
developments that are just battery storage,
Right, and well, that's what I was saying, what if you
Yeah.
just have just battery storage, and then you have like solar battery storage and wind battery storage, and like,
We wouldn't need a. we
or is it
wouldn't
just
need-
gonna go and just C battery
Yeah.
storage, period?
Yeah, I think the third one was wind.
Yeah.
Gotcha, yeah,
That's what, yeah.
yeah.
But so then from that perspective,
So then we wouldn't pull it, but just say on solar, maybe narrow it?
Yeah, so we could define it to say that battery storage systems associated with solar
Yeah.
utility scale solar are not prohibited for these reasons.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the law is in effect. Because
Yeah.
without that, we would
If
prohibit it,
Yeah.
right? For sure.
Yeah, it might not take effect.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
I mean, the stat, yeah, right, because the statute for the, hang on, let me pull it up real quick. Just a moment. Okay, so it applies to, oops. So it's energy storage. It's energy storage facility with a nameplate capacity of 50 megawatts or more and an energy discharge capacity of 200 megawatt hours or more. So I'm guessing the ones on the side of solar likely aren't gonna be that big.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we just maybe add that qualifying language, that would work. And then deal with the actual battery, energy storage facilities the same way in a separate ordinance with that same triggering provision.
So is that kind of typical that you would take what we have and then work with Mateo, kind of incorporate your suggestions into a revised document that we will get back
Right.
maybe for the February meeting?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some additional language to say yea or nay to today.
Right.
And then based on that, again, at the direction of the township board and your contract with them, we can work together on what comes up in February.
If that works?
Yes.
That's not too aggressive of a time.
No, that's not too aggressive.
Hey, Steve, can we answer a question?
I'm sorry, Scott, we can't do that.
You guys pretty much covered a lot of stuff. There's one thing I didn't cover.
Mateo, do you want to go ahead and go through your changes?
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura.
Yes, welcome.
So based on the last meeting, some of the changes that were discussed, the first one is in reference to the setbacks. So we had talked about the 300 feet from the nearest dwelling unit or 100 feet from the property line, whichever is greater. So we went ahead and added that language in. And then I also added in from property line to the other ones, just so it's very clear for the other uses, what those distances need to be. And then there was also some clarification in the paragraph below that, because we state that the setbacks measured from the utility scale solar energy system, which could be any component thereof, but if it is the solar array, what the tilt angle would be for that.
Well, so that's for the, oh, okay, that's on the offset, the setback is at minimum tilt.
Yeah,
Okay,
So
understood.
just that if the closest component is a solar array,
Yeah,
how are we measuring that solar array?
understood.
If
I was
it's a-
reading minimum tilt, but that's for the horizontal location, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So that was the first edit that we made based off the last meeting. Do you have any questions or clarifications on that?
I have a question for her. So on very specific, it talks about either a solar or photovoltaic array. Is that photovoltaic array still kind of under the solar language?
Sorry, which spot are you at? I'm not the setback one.
23.3.
Okay, you have 23.3.
Just above B,
All right, got it.
right, it says, should the nearest component of utility solar scale solar energy system be solar or photovoltaic array? The measurement shall be taken from the array at minimum tilt. I just wanted to know,
Because at the last meeting, just add context to it.
Yeah, in context.
We had discussed that there's solar arrays, there's photovoltaic arrays. But we wanted to make sure we were kind of covering
Yeah, they're still gonna be under the same umbrella.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions or comments? All right, the next edit that was made based on comments is to the fire response section, the second to last paragraph.
Could you, Mateo, just tell us where you're at, so.
Yeah, so page
23.9?
23.9.
Okay.
And it would be, it's a partial paragraph at the top, a full paragraph, and then the one after that, where it says special equipment. So we added the sentence at the end that says, "The authority to determine whether and what type of special equipment is needed shall be with the fire and/or rescue departments serving the township." And this came from, there needs to be a provision for equipment necessary to address any issues at the site. We wanted to clarify who has the authority to determine what that equipment is and whether or not you need it. And we made it with the emergency service departments.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that one, could we add in there about the battery storage? The containment with that sentence, would that be included in that?
Well, I think
The fire department
Well, I'll let you
aimed
go.
it necessarily?
You want to just trade
I
answer?
think we're gonna say the same thing. I think to the extent we're talking about battery storage in the facility, this covers, well, first we're saying it's prohibited. If we're going to do a separate battery storage ordinance, then that will have a similar provision to this.
Because the end, correct me if I'm wrong, the end product would be your solar org, your wind org, your storage.
Exactly, that's right.
All right, okay, so any other questions on that one, or concerns? The next one over, so page 2310, in panel type is where we added the solar and/or photovoltaic panels, just to make sure that both were covered when we were discussing what type of panel can be used at the sites. And then after that is the inclusion of the noise standards for the facility itself, being the 55 average hourly decibels as modeled with the exterior facility boundary. And if I'm not mistaken, the state statute has it from the dwelling unit, so this would be more restrictive than that.
Yeah, the state is 55 average hourly decibels as modeled at the nearest outer wall of the nearest dwelling located on an adjacent non-participating property.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right.
And property lines are pretty standard operating procedure,
Correct.
so.
Good.
Do we need to, sorry, backtracking over on R, do we need to be explicit of all the harmful chemicals, or is that, when we say such as cadmium or amorphous silicon, do we have to be more explicit than that?
So the general rule with legal drafting is you don't want to try to list every single thing
Okay.
because inevitably you won't list something and then it won't apply to that. So actually using such as is a good way to do it.
Okay, so that's the reason why I was gonna say, do we need to actually have those in there, or do we need to pull those out?
I think some examples can be good, but I think
Okay.
it's good that it's not exclusive.
Okay. That's all?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions or clarifications on noise?
Yeah, the one I have is we talked about local content on the solar panels so that they were produced and made in the United States.
Yeah.
I'm getting to a Kurt, I promise.
Yeah, I looked at everything but the last.
Yeah, yeah. So then on the last page, 312 is where we added the provision that the applicant shall provide proof showing all panels used at the facility are manufactured in the United States of America.
And is that, Laura, is that gonna be a problem, or is that below?
I haven't seen any challenges to that specifically, so could somebody make a challenge? Again, I think it's not prohibited, you can still have your panels, it just might cost you more to make them because you have to make them in the USA.
Yep.
Now, are we saying made in USA, or are we saying with global parts?
Manufactured in the,
Exactly.
should be acceptable, both the state and federal government have mandates on construction materials made in the USA.
Yeah,
That sure is, okay.
and this is a state where that's important to a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah, I never want to, pull out a crystal ball, but I'm not sure that's the hill that the industry would die on.
And then that's a summation from the last meeting. So from here, I mean, again, we can discuss language further, we can go into other items, topics, but if the draft as you see it now is one that you're comfortable with, Carlisle Wortman, engaging the attorney on, and kind of bringing with her expertise added in at the next meeting, and I think we are at the tip of, having a full-handed ordinance to provide you guys.
I think that sounds like a good plan to me, to work with Laura, get this all buttoned up, bring it back to the next meeting, we'll go through it. If it's satisfactory to everyone, then we'll set a public hearing, or is there another step?
So we may want to look at the final draft after, the draft that we're going to receive potentially by the February meeting.
Yeah.
Kind of give that an overview before we actually set.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Set the public hearing after we review it.
Correct.
in
Yeah,
February.
that would be appropriate, yes.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that takes care of that.
I think we're good. Thanks for all your input. I really appreciate that.
Very good.
Okay, then we actually get into some actual site plan items here. We have the Tyrone Party Store site plan. This is amendment here? Well, it's probably amendment to their existing site plan changes.
Yeah.
Site plan might be not really.
You want to start on the site plan or the review from Carlisle?
We can start out with the summary and then get the.
What's that?
So traditionally, we'll get a summary from the applicant of the request. We'll have Mateo get into the review, kind of go through point by point as much as the planning commission feels necessary, and then kind of have some back and forth between the planning commission and the applicant to address some of the items listed on the memo.
Yeah, I think that the applicant give us some overview color to the
Yeah,
situation
that
is appropriate.
Absolutely.
All right. You can state your name for us.
Ron Newman from Triumph Engineering.
What was your name?
Ron Newman.
Floor is yours.
I just don't know where to start, sorry. Just we can review this and we got a review letter back, we can agenda this and turn it in, and I don't know what you guys got any questions for us.
So I think the best thing to do is just a brief summary of the project.
Okay.
From there, we can kind of go through the review and then the planning commission can take it from there.
Okay, Tyrone Party Store is proposing to take the automotive section, the garage section, and eliminate the garage section and make that the new party store. And then the old party store will be a tenant lease space, if they ever have a tenant for that lease. And then other than that, that's pretty much it.
So then all the automotive operations would be gone?
Be gone. The garage and the storage and everything, yeah.
The storage is staying.
The storage, okay.
Yeah.
What about the towing?
Towing is staying off.
Yeah, it's the mechanics area that's going to go away.
So that'll be behind this wood fence area there?
Correct.
Okay. There's a lot of, like, trucks and stuff that are parked in here, those are all gonna be gone too?
Yep, it'll all be gone.
Because those are just primarily trucks that are being worked on, right?
And they'll.
Part of the automotive.
I think from the elevation, that's a big improvement.
I think we need food in this area. You know, where can you go get food around this area?
Either Mike's or.
You go to the party store over on Runyon Lake, right?
Yeah.
Or you go to Clyde Road, or you go up to
Yeah.
Pond Road.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's needed around here.
I think it's needed, I think it's aesthetically better, I mean, more appealing, and clean up the, no offense, but clean up all the junk cars and all that, or not junk cars, but the cars that are there. I think it would be a benefit.
I think so.
All right, if that's what you have, Mateo, take us away.
Yeah, so per the ordinance, the way it works is if it's defined as a major change, then an amended site plan has to be submitted, and it has to be reviewed as a full site plan.
Sure.
So it's a little thick, but from the perspective of following the letter of the ordinance, we had to kind of put everything under review for it. So as it relates to that, we can kind of go through the report and the specific sections where we identified issues and kind of work through what the solutions may be, or the options may be for the planning commission. So if you want, we can kind of start with the area width, height, and setbacks, it's on page 5. And my apologies, actually prior to that, under the project narrative or the site description, we did note that, you know, based on the survey provided and aerials, it seems as though these storage operations and basically the storage operations are kind of exceeding the eastern lot line. That's an observation by ours. It's our lot where we can't offer any kind of position that the planning commission can take on that necessarily. That's a township enforcement item. Area width and setbacks. So again, we kind of go through the process of looking at the existing property, looking at the existing zoning, the setbacks, things of that nature. And some of the items that we noted is that the existing structure does encroach on the west side yard setback into the current zoning establishment. Typically, it would be the case that you'd want to look to see if there was a variance provided at some point in time for that setback. I know I worked with Ross, and it doesn't seem as though there's record of any kind of variance being offered. Typically in that position, you would assume that at the time in which the original building was built and sent through review, that it conformed and was allowed to be as such. So given that the encroachment is a foot, we don't necessarily think it is an item to be hung up on, but just wanted to make you guys aware of.
So the side yard is 20 and it's 19.3.
Correct.
It's very minor. We did go through, try to locate any variances from back then, could not identify it. However, traditionally, if it has been approved, this would have gone through planning commission and township board. There may have been a mechanism at that time that we haven't identified. It was approved, so we typically honor that as an existing non-conforming portion of the site.
As it relates to the setbacks and items in that section, another issue is, so when we look at on the drawings themselves, the east side yard setback wasn't included on the sheet. Looking at it using a scale, we're quite comfortable and, you know, assuming that that's correct.
Yeah,
Adding it to the site plan for review is, you know, takes the word assume out of it, which is kind of what we want to do.
Well, I'll add it in there.
You know, and then to that note as well, again, the building height looked to conform, but the measurement wasn't taken from the midpoint of the even the ridge, which is what the zoning states. Again, using a scale, we assume they look good, but assume there's nobody using a courtroom. So, yeah, so the attorney can attest to that. So those are the items as it relates to kind of the setbacks, the bulk, things of nature. Do you guys have any questions from that?
The front setback, am I reading the table wrong, or is it proposed 78 and required 100? Is that correct?
That is existing.
Okay, so it'd fall into
It's existing.
existing.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
like
only
you
proposed
mentioned.
modification is in the rear. Just gonna jump out.
Okay. For natural resources, there wasn't anything that struck us as concerning about, you know, natural features for the site, so there weren't any items addressed there. Access and circulation kind of gets into the parking determination for the site, and so based on that, you have an automobile service definition for parking, but you also have a retail component to it as well. The challenge for us in reviewing it from that perspective was that you, on the application, it states that you've got the storage or the auto garage that's going to be converted to a kind of convenience store setup. But then the existing convenience store would get leased out to another user potentially.
Yes.
And so at that point, we have to look at it as kind of a dual use because you have the gas station kind of auto mart function and then you have this other retail function. So we assess the parking under the two uses.
Okay.
Based on that, you don't comply because there's a lot of parking requirements for the two separate uses.
We're only going to have the one that's going to be retail at the end.
But the current retail space is then going to be to lease to a third party.
Correct, but we will take in that consideration for them parking too. because that's a square foot of 1,000 square feet.
And so that's where I think that's, again, assessing the application and the way it was presented, we had to look at it.
Right, I understand.
Yeah. I think you'd be in a better position if all of the retail space was considered to be one convenient operation as
Okay.
opposed to two separates. I think under that, you can fall into the auto mart, auto service definition and only come under one of the parking requirements, of which I think, I mean, it's interesting because I think even if you came under still the automobile, auto mart definition, you still might be short on a space or two, but you're not short 24 spaces.
Right. We can make up a couple here and there.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is some potential on the site to organize the parking in a manner that would get you a few more sites if you needed them.
Right, well, there's the front of the building where you're trying to stay away from parking in front of the building, which everybody does anyway, but.
In front of the garage doors that are
Yes.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those, okay. Yeah, so I mean, that's really more or less for the applicant to decide, you still want to propose it as being potentially two separate retail operations
Okay.
or one retail operation. And I think if it comes under one retail operation, then it's the one designation, auto mart parking. But you would still need to make that adjustment, see where your parking falls, and then build in the spaces that you need. Sure.
We'll just, yeah, we'll have chats.
Yeah, again,
Yeah, we'll get it clarified
Yeah.
from you.
so that kind of addresses the parking issue. I wanted to, so, a loading area is not defined on the plan and is required
Yes.
for those spaces, so again, we didn't see it on the drawings.
We haven't had it confirmed, but it was gonna be behind the store. Come in through and then back. in.
Where the addition is proposed
Yes.
in that area, okay.
Behind the coolers, you know where the coolers are gonna go?
Yeah,
And then park in the side there, there's a door right there so they can,
okay.
you've seen that on the drawing?
I've seen the addition, yes, where there's,
Yeah, on the east side, there's a new door right there that's, they're to come in and
Okay.
stop that way, and then there's that hallway right down to the back.
but the loading would be in the rear.
To be in the rear, on the side and in the rear. The east side and the rear.
Okay. One of the things that we did cite is that because the new use would potentially bring in more both vehicle and foot traffic to the space, is that an assessment of that there's a good chunk of the concrete on the site that's not in the best of shape. And that if you're gonna have more vehicles on the site and more foot traffic on the site, you don't necessarily want people, I do it all the time, actively dodging a certain part of the parking lot and then not paying attention to what I'm doing and I sideswipe somebody else, I mean, I'm going down the road of what ifs, but we cited that improvements to the lot would be recommended per the additional vehicle and foot traffic that the larger convenience store would generate. There's some dimensional issues with the handicap spaces. I mean, did you see?
Yeah, we got that off of the township, so I'll get with you on that and we'll make sure we get the correct.
Okay, all right, yeah, we can take a look at it.
Yeah.
And then we weren't sure if there were any other comments from the township engineer, fire chief. We usually kind of solicit their review if there's any concerns from those departments. So just to kind of summarize the items that we looked at, we discussed the handicap spaces and the dimensions. We talked about the parking and the adjusting the application to show one retail use essentially. The one loading space we discussed, and the pavement repairs. Did the PC have any questions or comments regarding that section? There aren't a lot of, you don't have a lot of control when it comes to parking. Landscaping is a different story, but parking, this is kind of, Ross and I talked about and tried to figure out how to work with you guys on it, but there isn't a waiver you can offer for parking. So that's why we're recommending the further definition of the uses on site.
Okay. So currently, we have a variance from the state. They own it would be the southeast corner.
Okay, by Old 23.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we're allowed to park on that.
If you, That's great. If you've got
That
that,
variance should be
We
in your
need the
paperwork.
documents. I wasn't able to locate anything,
Okay.
but if you have those, just provide.
But now that it's changing from bays, weren't we required to have like 5 parking spots per bay?
well, if you're talking about the service base,
Yeah.
if you're getting rid of that use, then you don't
Right,
have to
but
park.
wouldn't that parking apply to the new?
You mean that allocation, those spaces that already exist that are meeting that?
Yes.
Yeah, but even based on the calculations, give me a second. For the automobile service, we couldn't determine if you met that use because the ordinance states that we need to know the number of employees that you have. And the site plan doesn't show that 2 vehicles can stack behind your fuel pumps. So dimensionally on the site plan, you would show at the fuel pump, stacking spaces for the vehicles to line up to use the gas. It wasn't shown on the plan, but the ordinance states that that's one of the tools we have to use to measure it. So we couldn't determine whether or not you complied with the automobile service standards. The retail standards, they still come into place, but that's gonna be an accessory use to the gas station, because the gas station is still gonna stay and operate, correct?
Correct.
So, yeah, so I mean, it would be using the auto mart definition, which I think that the way we calculated it is you would come to somewhere around 24 spaces. Like, I think if you put it under the auto, because the convenience store is an accessory use to the primary use of a gas station, auto service, auto mart station, you're gonna get close. Are you stating that the vehicles being stored along that side are no longer gonna be there, so the spaces would be available?
Yeah, see, the whole the whole southeast corner is gonna be wide open now.
Well, on the plan, they show parking.
Yeah, we showed, yeah.
No, it's okay.
Up to the property line.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we can park past that line, the whole road.
If you can fit, by dimensional requirements of your ordinance, if you can fit more parking in there, then that's an area that you could work on it.
Okay.
Does that parking include the future retail store? Like the parking spaces of 24?
Yeah, so the way we assessed it was the 2 uses together.
Yeah.
But what we're saying is if he combines it, the retail use to be a single, the whole place is gonna be one convenience store, then we can use a single designation to assess the parking. And if you don't meet it, you'll be a few spaces off, as opposed to, you start jumbling uses together, and all of a sudden you need 200 parking spaces for that site.
Yeah, but if they say that, okay, we're gonna have one use, and then 2 years from now they decide, oh, well, we're just gonna lease that space out, do we have any enforcement ability that we could do? I mean, I'm not saying that you guys would, but I'm just saying that it'd be easy to say, hey, we're gonna be one use, and then 2 years from now they find a tenant, and that's.
Well, that's why I would like to do it right now.
Yeah.
You just elbow them and that's the
No,
that's the
I
enforcement.
Yeah, I don't want to have that issue, so I have to come back.
Yeah, we
So
want to
if I
get
decide
approved.
to rent it out in the future, it's done now.
Yeah, just thought, let's bring it up.
Yep.
So is this parking for both customers and employees?
Well, only the,
That's for the customers, you had the employee parking in the back.
Okay, I was just gonna recommend that. I was gonna say, 'cause we didn't
We don't
have,
have it shown there, but the employee
Okay.
parking was gonna be on the east side.
I don't know if that goes into the calculations, I didn't.
well, so it does under one of the designations,
Okay.
which I think ultimately you guys might fall under, because the gas station's gonna remain. But if those spaces are shown on the site plan, then they can be counted.
Okay, we'll put it back, yeah.
And the loading area too.
Yeah, the loading area, yeah. And then, the loading area will be on the east side of the building, and then we'll go over farther east for the parking, the additional parking for the employees.
Then, so the next section deals with the essential services and utilities. We kind of went over the drawings. There was some information that was a little hard to delineate based on some of the some of the language got a little blurred and smudged, and then I believe it was the gas line was a little hard to define. I think it was shown in yellow, and so it was a little hard for us to find. I mean, we're comfortable assuming that the property has the appropriate utility services.
Yes.
What we wanted to make sure that got addressed was that just confirmation that the proposed building doesn't interfere with any overhead or underground water, sewer, storm lines, and or underground or overhead electrical service. So something in writing in the application stating such. And then the placement and or specifications of current infrastructure shown on sheets C2 and C3 should be clearly legible and identifiable. And again, on the legend, something got smudged.
Okay.
And then I believe the gas lines in yellow. It was just hard to ensure.
Yeah, that yellow, I understand.
So if that can be, I don't think that those being clarified will churn up any new issues, but making sure that they're equally legible was the point. Those are
Yeah, we'll just make that a darker layer.
Sure, yeah, that's all, that's what we need. Any questions or concerns about utilities or services?
811 call before you dig, that's a good note to have on there.
On every one of them.
Okay, all right, so landscaping. So again, per the requirement of the review, it had to go under a full site plan review. You've got a lot of landscaping, you have a lot of different kind of landscaping requirements for different situations and different uses. The landscaping section, 21A09 of the zoning ordinance does state that you can assess whether or not to, not enforce, you can modify certain landscaping requirements. That modification could include not requiring any new landscaping, because the site's not proposing any new landscaping. But as we went through the review, using the current standards in the ordinance, and what was on site, the site doesn't have full compliance with your landscaping. The areas kind of in which we noted that it wasn't compliant is that there's parking that's used along the front yard, and so you have the 3 spaces there, and the existing conditions, there's a rock wall and 6 deciduous trees. We can't necessarily review or consider any of the landscaping along US 23 because it's not on the site. So the requirement there is whether or not like a green belt would be required to screen those 3 spaces from the road. You know, which of which you can require a green belt, you can require some sort of landscape screening, you can require a berm. Again, at some point in time when the site was originally built, the landscaping would have been approved, so on and so forth. But that section right there is something that will need a modification waiver if you choose to do so, or you can require it to come into conformance.
This is regarding the south end of the site along Center Road?
Yeah, so anywhere where parking is proposed along like a front yard or a side yard, you have to have screened landscaping from the parking. So given that there's 3 spaces there, that's why we cited that. Then there's the 9 spaces along US 23. There is a limitation to that because there physically isn't any green space along their property line in 23 to plant anything anyways. And I'll get to, at the end of the section, I'll kind of walk through the different waivers that you may want to consider.
I think the current landscaping is pretty good. It looks better than most gas stations.
And that's, I mean, again, upon the site's original construction, a site plan would have been approved. And you do have the ability to modify the requirements of which stating that the current landscaping, you know, is sufficient.
And you can take into consideration just the general aesthetic improvements to the site, you know.
You can't really do much better.
I think just getting those vehicles that are being worked on, the big trucks and that, having those moved out of there and having the parking, I think that is gonna be
Beautiful spot.
an improvement, and since there's no room, because it's right up to the property line, the drive and the parking, you can't really, I don't see how he's gonna put trees
No,
on the east.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you look at this area, and you look at Tyrone Hills across the street, on a Saturday, that's got 200 cars in their gravel parking lot, and there's hardly any trees. I mean, I don't understand why we want to try to require adding additional trees to street parking.
Well, let me ask you this much. Understanding the site as you do, are there any landscaping modifications or requests that you would want to make? Maybe that's,
Oh, like I said, I think for a gas station, it looks pretty
I
good.
think just, from the standpoint of cleaning up,
Yeah, I would say there's usually a couple motor homes that are hanging out there, but
Yeah.
that's gonna be out with the automotive
it's gonna
uses, so.
better, a lot better.
okay. All right, well, like I said,
I mean, that's just my thought.
no, that's fine. Like, when I get to the end section, I'll walk through the waivers that would be needed for the sections. The one item that does fall under the landscaping section is the solid waste receptacles. So currently on site, the dumpster's on the side of the building and visible, and the way the ordinance is written is that the waste receptacle shall be enclosed by a wooden door, which it is, not less than 5 feet, I believe it's 6. So you're good there. You're good on height, you're good on the wooden doors. The receptacle shall be located in the rear of the site unless prevented by topographic conditions. In all cases, the receptacle shall be located where it is least visible from the public right-of-way and adjacent properties. This does fall under the landscaping section, which does allow you to make some modifications. So this could fall under waiving the requirement of moving the dumpster. But that's kind of the last piece of the landscaping assessment that we cited.
Yeah, it's probably gonna get relocated into the backyard for convenience.
Yeah.
Then if you're gonna relocate it, then let's relocate it on, when you come with your revisions, let's put it.
We'll relocate the dumpster.
Yeah, I think that's great.
If it's relocated, will the emergency vehicle be able to loop the
Yeah, well,
building then? At that
they
time?
can't go around the building because there's a fence and it's tied on that west side up there.
It's too close.
Yeah, there's a well on that.
We were gonna try to make a drive-through for the delivery trucks, but it's too tight for that.
But maybe that, where the dumpster is now could be a parking spot, or 2 parking spots.
Yeah, at least one, yes,
At
for
least
sure.
one, yeah.
Okay.
That'd be a good handicap spot.
Yeah.
Yes, it will.
As long as they're right dimensions.
Yes, yeah, we gotta go through that, yes.
Okay, so then we'll kind of walk through, at the end of the review completely, we'll go through the laundry list at the end and we'll check the boxes of what you guys are requesting and not, just so we have record of it. But for this section, what we identified was the dumpster gate specification should be at the sheet C3. That's so that 20 years down the road, if someone decides I'm gonna change these gates to something, we have drawings saying they're wood, and that's what they're supposed to be. So those need to be added to the sheet. The location of the dumpster should be moved, we've addressed that. The planning commission will need to determine if existing conditions fulfill front yard landscaping requirements. Planning commission will need to determine if it requires landscape screening along any portion of the property perimeter. Planning commission will need to determine if existing conditions fulfill landscaping adjacent to road requirements. Planning commission will need to determine if it will require information to calculate general landscaping requirements. And the planning commission will need to determine if existing landscaping adjacent to parking areas fulfills requirements. We'll go through all that one more time, but those are all of the different sections in your landscaping ordinance that you can provide the modifications from. Lighting, we didn't, there was no photometric plan.
No, yeah, I didn't do one yet.
So this would kind of be something where you can determine, your ordinance does require a photometric plan. It may be worthwhile requesting this just to see if existing site lighting is sufficient for the new use of maybe more feet in the parking lot, more cars in the parking lot. I was there this evening, it was bright, but again, a photometric plan on paper is kind of your documented, your documentation stating that, yes, there is sufficient lighting at the site per the use change. So our position is that a photometric plan should be included so that then you can determine if current site lighting is sufficient.
And that's not a problem, Ron?
No, not a problem.
Okay.
Signage, we noted that there's no signage information in the application other than the location of the existing signage. Signage is a different permitting process, so just at the point in time in which if any site signage was going to change, you just need to make sure that you reference the appropriate section of the ordinance for whenever that site signage can change. Architectural standards, okay. So this is another one where you guys have some pretty specific architectural standard and design requirements of Section Township. Basically, it's a tool to ensure that quality exterior construction materials are used, the things that complement the community are, visually pleasing. Your powers here are that you have the ability to kind of guide them in one direction of you can either provide an architectural waiver, which waives them from having to update to all of the current requirements from the perspective of 50% of the building's got to be shiplap, and the other 50%'s got to be stone, and you fall under group 2 and you fall under group 5. If you don't provide any of those waivers, then they have to come into full compliance with the architectural review standards. The ordinance does allow to say that if you're modifying an existing building to make it look as if though the addition and the alterations were always a part of it, then that's an acceptable requirement. From the drawings, it looks like that's exactly what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But we noted that some of the notes on the elevation stated that the materials were to be specified by owner.
Yeah, we never did get it, yeah.
And so what we would need is a specification that states that it is the matching materials of the current facade. We would also need elevations of the side and the rear showing the expansion and showing that it is using materials, in essence, to make it look as if it was original part of the structure.
Okay.
If you go that route, then they meet the standards of the ordinance. You can grant them a waiver from the architectural standards, but that requires specific documentation stating how the building is going to conform to, or stating how the building is still going to maintain a visually pleasing presence and use high-quality materials. It's the same thing. And in our mind, it's a little bit easier to go the route of having them provide additional elevations and specifying materials a little bit more finite on the plan stating, to match existing, than it is to have them write up a big document and provide a bunch of specification sheets for the architectural waiver. So our recommendation is that they add that additional information to the site plan, showing the elevations and the exterior construction materials, that they would be enough for the planning commission to say, yes, this is acceptable.
Yeah. On the elevations, it looks like you're going to completely redo the whole elevation.
The elevation's really not gonna change.
I mean, no, not
The whole front,
siding.
the whole face
Yeah.
is gonna be done from one end to the other.
Yeah.
And then the new doorway, the new entranceway will be matching in too.
And, yeah, it looks like there's a new brick here and some type of a shake, is that what that is?
No, it's, are you familiar with Silver Parkway, that metal they use on top that looks like fake wood?
Yes.
Those, like Dunhams and that
Yeah,
stuff
yeah,
down
yeah,
there?
yeah.
That's what we want to use.
It's fancy stuff.
Well, it looks a lot better than a bunch of doors.
It's good stuff. That's fancy. That's high-end quality material. That's good. It'll look good.
So I'll kind of go through the items that we specified. And like I said, we'll go through the last critique. Color specifications for all the materials should be provided. Again, that's kind of the step towards confirming that this is going to be the same material. So we need color specifications. To determine if section 23.18F requirements have been fulfilled, sheet A13 should know whether proposed infill exterior construction materials for all elevations will match existing exterior construction materials. Side and rear elevations showing the proposed addition as well as specify exterior, specify materials to be used for the new proposed double door entry should be added to the sheet. The new double doors, the specifications were provided on the other sheet as to the type that you would be using. But if on the elevation, the main elevation where you show the garage doors getting filled in, if the metal framing could be specified on that drawing as well, that elevation. And again, that's just so there's one elevation that shows you all the materials they're gonna be using.
Okay. Mateo, hold on one second. Hey, Laura, I know you've got a long ride back to
Yeah.
Grand Rapids. I think we're done.
Are you done with me?
Yes, I'm sorry that.
If you're having fun, you can.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my idea of a good time, but I will take you up on that. I did actually already email over the language, so we can connect and work through it on that.
Yeah, we'll get that drive
Yeah,
back.
thanks, absolutely.
Very good job of weather.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Sorry about that, Mateo.
What's that? Let's see. So part 5 is basically kind of going back to the, if we can't fulfill the requirements, showing that the site's going to be done with materials that.
The rear elevation is gonna be a tough one because that's where the cooler's coming out. We got that overhang, so, I mean, we're not really touching that.
What are the proposed construction materials of the addition, like the exterior construction materials?
The only addition we're putting on is the cooler out the back, and we're putting a lean-to over the top of it.
So the coolers are gonna be,
The coolers are gonna be the face of the wall, and then you walk, and they'll be outside, but there's,
Cooler's gonna be outside.
Is there like that aluminum color basically?
the coolers will be
The
outside.
walk-ins? Yeah.
Yeah.
The big walk-ins like you see on the back.
Yeah, it's just, the addition there is just an overhang.
Yeah, just to protect the coolers.
okay.
In the back, have you seen the structural?
Yeah, yes. But from the overhead, the next one down, if you don't mind, Rich. Where the dimensions are given off the back, you're stating that those will not be enclosed by building walls?
No, it's just a lean-to over the top to keep the elements off of the cooler and the condensers and stuff.
All right, I mean, I guess given that it's in the rear, I mean, unless the planning commission has concerns, then I wouldn't necessarily require elevations for the side of the rear.
I can get you the east side.
You can?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have an exhaust fan, and that's where the units will be sitting there too, so.
Okay. Yeah, so that kind of leads into my next question is, the mechanical equipment, the drawings showed some AHU units, but the way that they were shown on the drawings was just to the east
Yes.
of the building.
Yes.
Is that where they'll be placed?
Yes.
So they'll be on the east side,
Just right, yeah, right there.
on the exterior?
Yes.
Isn't that in your loading area?
It will be by the loading area, yeah, they're gonna be off to the side of that. We're gonna be right up close to the,
Are you talking for the coolers?
yeah, no, for the whole area. We have two air handler units going in the side for the new, because you didn't have any AC or heat in there. So we're putting in the new.
Could you put that on the,
M100?
when you're doing your revisions, could you put that on the plan?
What do you mean on it?
Just, if you're gonna put the air handlers here?
Yeah, it's on here, that's on his write-up that we have to put them on there, so they.
And then it's loading it, yeah.
Yeah, because we have them on mechanical, but we don't have them on the site.
And what you're gonna, so for the site plan, if they're gonna go on the side of the building, make sure to reference the screening of mechanical equipment.
Yes.
Because that will be a consideration. So with that, that's kind of the extent of the full review. Did you guys have any questions or comments up to this point?
No, I see where I'm just looking now and where this makes it look like here it's an addition to the building. And this view right here, is the wall, so just make sure that's clear, like we said. My only thing.
So the rear wall of the building is not actually getting taken, expanded out?
No, we're gonna actually demo part of that wall and then put in some things across.
Okay.
And then, above it. Let's see here, that would be S. You can look at S102. No, you're back at the top. It's closer to the beginning.
Yeah, so.
Lean-to.
Side elevation of lean-to, yeah.
Too far.
Yeah, you went too far. You're back in the A's. We go A's, D's, yeah, C's.
There it is.
Yep, there you go, right there. Keep going down. You see in the center, there's the dash line.
Yeah.
There's the cooler, and then it's just a lean-to over the back. And if you look all the way to the right on that, halfway up that, above there's where the splice for the steel is. The columns will go in there.
Okay. But those beams, those are just beams, correct?
Yes,
Supporting the canopy?
yeah, it's just a frame out, and then the problem is that we have to underpin the corner
Okay,
to get that footer in there.
all right.
So there's some underpinning going on in there.
I mean, I would say, given the site surrounded by light industrial, I mean, if this was adjacent to residential, it would probably be a different conversation about the aesthetics associated with that. And again, discretion lies with the planning commission, but the site is surrounded by light industrial.
And there is fencing and screening also.
Yeah,
there's
On that area, yeah.
The back is screened in, yes.
Pretty sufficient.
But again, reference for those AHU units on the side, reference the screening requirements.
Yes, oh yeah, no problem.
These will be accessed from the inside of the building, these coolers?
Yes, you're gonna walk in, there'll be shelves on the one, and then there'll be a beer cave for the other one.
All right.
So you'll walk in just the one.
So if you want, we can kind of go through the laundry list and check things off. Okay? And just to be clear, you can, with a site plan and impact analysis, and sometimes we required, we felt as though because they were going to a lower intense use that an impact assessment was not necessary.
Traffic? Impact?
It's just, it's a general impact assessment that kind of assesses a handful of items, but again, it's really at the discretion of the planning commission if we feel that it's necessary. Again, given that the use is less intense, we didn't feel that it was. So we do, so an important item that needs to be noted is that the auto salvage storage yard operations are going to continue on site.
It's not auto salvage.
Just auto storage.
And that's temporary. When a vehicle's involved in an accident, it's taken there and then it's picked up.
The storage is temporary, but the use is not. The use you plan to remain as permanent.
Correct.
And that's behind the fence.
Correct.
Yeah, that was my only thing, just like on the site plan to note, hey, this is the section where
Okay,
whatever your vehicles that come in and off out of accidents or whatever, this is where they go, and then that way it's clear.
Yeah, and so when you start to think about your parking, clear delineation between what is your what is your auto storage area and parking and loading, like that will be important. Decision from the planning commission on the following waivers: the dumpster location, we discussed that it will be moved to the rear. It'll still need to follow the same requirements with the 6-foot screening the wood doors.
So if I have a wood door to get back there, do I still need a wood door in front of the dumpster?
It states that the wood door enclosure is still required, the full enclosure is still required, even if it's in the rear yard.
Okay.
The landscaping, we'll get into the specific waivers, but it sounds as though the determination of the plan commission, that existing landscaping is sufficient. And the proposed building materials, it sounds like we have a plan to adjust the drawings to confirm that the work that you'll be doing will be using materials to match, and again, provide all necessary specifications like color and material type, and the location. All right, so with that, the Planning Commission could recommend approval to this, of the site plan of the Township Board with the following conditions. We've discussed that the applicant will add a note stating that the auto storage operations are going to remain. Site parking and storage operations exceed the eastern lot line, but the applicant stated that there's documentation allowing for that. Be patient with me as I take notes. The existing structure encroaches the west side setback. Documentation after ZBA approval or pre-existing nonconformity needs to be submitted for review. Again, I've done the homework with Ross. Unless the applicant has any additional information that might aid as to why that setback encroachment is there, given it's a minor nonconformity and it was approved at some point in time, we don't feel it's an issue that needs to be further determined by the Planning Commission. The east side yard setback measurement should be added to the sheet, again, just so that there's no use of the word assumed. The building height should be measured from grade to the midpoint between the eave and the ridge and added to A13. Handicap spaces should be the correct dimensions and shown on sheet C3. So here it says parking should be calculated based on auto service station as well as retail use. With this one, again, if you're going to, the gas station still remains and it's going to be one retail use, then you can use the auto service station parking requirements to fulfill the site. The loading space should be added and shown on sheet C3 with the outline sections explaining the requirements for that. Pavement repairs should be made to assure safe circulation on site. This is something that the PC can state that they would like to see as part of the increased foot traffic and car traffic on the site. Is that something that you still want kind of addressed in the site plan regarding a note as far as the lot maintenance or improvements are concerned?
Is that?
I've been out there a lot, I haven't noticed anything bad, but I was looking at
Yeah,
that.
fix it.
No, that's getting done.
Yeah, I think put a note on the site plan makes sense.
So you want to note on the paper for paper
Yeah,
repairs?
so the pavement repair will take place. Again, notes on the utility sheet stating that the proposed building expansion does not interfere with overhead or underground water, sewer, storm, electric services. Existing utility infrastructure on sheets C2 and 3 should be clearly legible and an identifiable color.
Yeah, we'll make that gas line.
Yeah, that's just, again, don't want to make an assumption with the gas line. Dumpster gate specification should be added to sheet C3, and again, that's just for the purpose of the property sold. 20 years down the road, someone decides to change it to something that's not allowed, we have in writing that it's wood. Location of the dumpster should be moved to the rear of the building and shown on sheet C3. planning commission will need to determine, per section 21A09, if existing conditions fulfill the front yard landscaping, landscape screening along the property perimeter, unpaved open surface, landscape adjacent to roads, and landscape adjacent to parking area requirements. So those are the 5 ways in which your landscaping is assessed. You can provide basically the modification that you're not requesting any additional landscaping, that you feel the current suffices. And so my understanding is that you are providing those waivers.
I'm okay with the current landscaping.
Yeah, I am as well.
Photometric plan showing the current site lighting should be added to the site plan to allow the planning commission to determine if the current lighting is appropriate.
I think that would be, in my opinion, just to document
Yeah,
it.
he said you're gonna.
Yeah, we can take
He
care
said
of
they were
that.
gonna-
I just got to get what the lights are, the pole heights, so I'll get them sometime next week, at the end of the week.
Just for the signage, it's more or less a note, just that if, I'm assuming at some point in time you will be updating the signage for whatever the new retail uses will be, and just to make sure that you reference the ordinances with the township before doing that. Color specifications for all materials should be provided on sheet A13. In a color print would be great.
Or sample,
Samples.
if you could bring it.
So this is where, so to determine if section 2318F requirements have been fulfilled, sheet A13 should note whether proposed infill exterior construction materials for all elevations will match existing exterior construction materials. Side and rear elevations showing the proposed addition as well as the specified exterior construction materials and their location should be added to the plan. So we know that we're able to do the first part where on the front elevation,
Yeah.
you will provide the specification showing that it's going to be the matching materials.
Yes.
Up to the planning commissioners whether or not you guys want to see, an additional side elevation or rear elevation for the expansion of the, well, I guess expansion's probably the wrong definition. I mean, it's really a structural canopy over the coolers, correct? Okay.
Yeah, it's just to protect the cooler.
Okay. And again, given the discussion about the adjacent property and the current fencing and screening, it's more to you guys whether or not you want to see that information as well.
This is in the fenced-in area.
The rear, yes.
I think the east elevation is important. I mean, even though it's gonna be behind the fence, right? Yeah, that fence is there, so it's really not gonna see much of the east.
No.
So
You don't see the east, west, or north.
Yeah, you're not really gonna see it because it's gonna be behind the fence that's there.
Yeah, I mean, so again, just clarification while we're in here, now that I understand that it's more or less a structural canopy again, I don't know that those elevations are as necessary as the front elevation is.
Everything's happening up front, so
Sure.
Yeah, just to document the size of it, it wouldn't hurt, right? Hey, it's 20 feet from the building or 10, seems like the footprint. I
okay.
think which may be on there already.
So a side elevation?
I think they, yeah, it wouldn't hurt. And the fence is staying. Is the fence gonna stay there?
Correct.
So you want a side, you want the east elevation then?
Yeah, that probably, no, go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Okay. And then the specifications, specifications for the framing materials to be used on the new proposed double entry door should be added to A13?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just gonna be a typical storefront and
Yeah, that way, all of the facade materials are on A1,
yeah.
so they can see this is everything we're using up front, this is what we're specifying. So number 20, the ordinance does state that the architectural review committee shall review all building materials prior to site plan approval. I talked to Ross.
Historically, it's just done by the planning commission as the architectural review committee, so.
We did that on the last application.
Well, for all of them, yes.
Yeah, I definitely-
Historically, that's, yeah.
Building material facade finishes shown on A13 should include, percentage coverages. We can X this one out because this was if we weren't gonna be able to go the route of allowing them to prove that the infill materials will be the same as what's existing. They'd have to go the route of conforming to the ordinance, which is again, 50% of this, 25% of that, group A, group 2. So we can strike 21. And then 22, mechanical equipment location must be shown on sheet C3 as well as A13 to ensure proper placement and screening if necessary. So unless there's any other questions or concerns about review or materials, you could make a motion to approve with these conditions, and we would just need to go through and note which conditions you're kind of skewing from that are in writing.
If you go that route, that's generally just confirmed through the planning commission subcommittee informally, right? If you're making the motion to approve before it actually gets forwarded to the board.
So we don't need a public hearing in this one?
No, because it's a permitted use, but all uses within the district require site plan review.
So we can basically
We can approve it right now.
approve it now and
You
just...
can do it with conditions.
With conditions.
With the conditions that he stated that I have to put on the drawing for you guys.
But you don't have to come back before this board.
Yeah, you guys could do a conditional approval, he can submit.
It's a conditional recommendation.
Yeah,
Then at that point, we get all of the additional information. We'll have the subcommittee informally review. Once that's verified, I can forward it to the township board for final consideration.
And I know it was just a quick question, the timing aspect of the project. I know the permitting process, you gotta have permits pulled and done. They kind of push you on the timeline. Just curious.
Probably the next 6 months.
Okay.
Construction is supposed to start April 1st. So, but that's all on, lead times and materials and things.
But yeah, this may be something to document, hey, the intended plan. I think in other applications, we've asked for that, so that we're, hey, when are you beginning to answer?
If you are going to consider though, Billy, you might want to recuse yourself.
Does anyone want to make that motion?
I guess he went through the conditions.
Do we have to go through and go over all the conditions again?
well, so I think, what we can do is
We can use numbers.
we can go through and cite, like, which ones we've changed, because which ones we've changed is less than the ones that we've approved, and state that, without, I guess considering we could go just through the ones that we've approved, we'd have to do it again, but we can use, like I said, Ross said numerically, we can accomplish that.
as far as the motion goes, we can say items 1, 2, 4, 5 are the conditions of approval. They need to be fulfilled prior to approval.
Well, I would recommend that we we recommend approval to the board based on the satisfactory
Conditional
resolution of the items. Dale, if you want to go through those again.
Sure. So it would be your item number 1, stating that the auto salvage yard operations will continue.
And specifying the location.
Yeah, should that change to auto storage?
Auto storage, yeah. The east side, number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7, with the exception of that the parking will be calculated based on auto service station, not retail use. Number 8. Number 9. Number 10.
Yep.
Number 11. Number 12. Number 13. would say number 14, in that the planning commission has decided to waive the landscaping requirements. Number 15. Number 17 doesn't need to be included, it's just the reference to the signage. Number 17. Number 18, with the modification that only the east elevation will be required.
In addition to the,
Updated front and then.
Yeah. So the first part of it flies, and the second part of it's just the east elevation.
Yeah.
Number 19. Number 20 and 21 are not necessarily number 22.
so that is our motion.
I would make that the motion of those items, so it's conditional upon fulfillment of those items verified by the planning commission subcommittee. And then also, I would just state separately, making a note that you've waived the architectural, or the landscaping and screening standards, right?
Yeah, my apologies. One other item was that you had stated that your possession of a letter regarding the east property line.
West property line.
The west.
Oh, the east one.
East property. Yeah.
If you have that, yeah.
That should be on file.
Here.
It may be.
Oh,
Then
yeah, so it would be, so,
I had them look through it, I'll double check.
so it should, I guess it could be number 2 modified that the applicant will provide documentation indicating the operations on MDOT's.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ross, do you want a separate waiver for the landscaping?
I just had a separate statement, say these conditions, noting that the planning commission has determined that they'd like to waive the screening and landscaping requirements.
Okay.
So we've got a motion for recommendation of approval conditional upon the following items. Item number 1, item number 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 modified, 15, 17, 18 modified, number 19 and number 22, noting that the planning commission has waived the landscaping and screening requirements.
Support.
All right, we have a motion and support. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? All right, please make a note that Bill
Yeah, that Bill
has
is-
abstained.
Abstaining.
All right. We are through, it looks like, old business and new business. Is there anything else, Ross, before we go to the call to the public?
No, I don't have anything from miscellaneous business. I think we're in good shape with the solar, we're in good shape with the master plan to get that set up, so.
All right, now at this time, we're going to go to the second call to the public where you can bring up anything that anyone would like. I do want to make everyone aware that this is not a conversation. This is your chance to comment. So we cannot respond to your comments. I will make notes and I will try to get back to people as best I can. So that's basically all I can offer on that. So if you have a public comment, please come up, make your comment, and we're going to try to keep it to 3 minutes and keep this moving. Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, now we just turned into a township. We were lucky, at least we had a planning commission that we could communicate with, now we don't. Thank you, Mike Cunningham.
Yeah.
One more reason we need to get rid of Mike Cunningham. All right, no public hearing. It's an amendment to the site plan. Okay, I got a big issue with it because they've got the storage unit there for the vehicles. So Corrigan's still coming out of his records to drop the cars. So he's not going to answer me because it's just a comment section. Okay, To this day, I still don't know the busted batteries, the busted radiators, the busted transmissions, how much of that oil is going into the ground over there. We're worried about the solar panels and the battery storage. I want that damn storage out of there now. If he's gonna do what he's doing, that's gotta go. Okay, another thing, the gas pumps are right in front of the building, he's gonna rent out. They should go over in front of the store. You go over there now. When you go over there now, where he's got the car storage, he's gonna be parking. That's where your majority of parking is. When contractors come up there, when people are coming out there getting food and gas, that's where they park. So they're gonna block all the cars in. If they're not parked down the road, which they do, the contractors, because they don't want to drive up the Fenton and that guy. Because, you know, he's got a good business there, I do business there, but I worry about safety. It's 1.6 acres. I think something needs to go. That storage unit, give us a little more room. I mean, you guys, you don't even hear from the public. I mean, I'm not trying to put him, I don't want him there. He's a good guy. But we have something to say. And it's too congested on that corner anyway. We don't want it. It's gonna build up some more. And I'm worried about the dumpage of the stuff out of the cars. So you can have 3 businesses, Corrigan's, his party store, and whatever, we don't even know what's gonna go in there. And those people, their business here is the gas pumps. When those cars are parked around here, you can't, I go through with my trailer, it's tight. Somebody's little kids are running through, they're gonna get run over. And then if you gotta go on a crisscross across the parking lot, coming in and out, it's even worse. I've been in there a million times. It's tight. You ever think about safety? I'd feel much better if the pumps were over. I know it's a big thing to do, but they're right in front of where he's gonna lease that out. If I was leasing it out, that would be my parking spots. I mean, you know, you're gonna get a little bit of crossover, but it just seems like a cluster to me, you know, cluster F. I won't replace the whole word. But I know you guys always try to help out the people that come here to do things. The public comes in here because we think about, the number one thing is safety when we do these things. Public safety. And that's my number one priority. I want the man to have his business, but I look at it this way, the car storage should go. He brought up a good point. There's not enough parking in there. And there's gonna be big contractor trucks coming in and out there. And we don't even know what's going in next door. Because we don't know. So if there's a fast food, how much other stuff's coming in there? That's my number one priority. Oh, number 2, real quick. I wanted to get you with her here, is the big question was the stuff that gets contaminated in the soil. Last we were talking about this battery storage facility in the solar, is there only supposed to clean up down to a certain level? No, can we regulate down further than that? That's what I wanted to know from her. Can we force her to fix the water, clean up that, if it's 12 foot down, they gotta pull it all out and put it back. From what we were talking about before, they didn't have to do that. Can we regulate that? But we weren't allowed to ask the questions. See, this is the way it was used to be before. We only got a handful of people here. And I know, I'm gonna tell you something, guys, I'm not attacking you. We can't attack each other, we're here to talk, but now we can't even talk. Now we can't even talk and ask a question. I'm saying, we don't even know what's coming up when you guys go up there. We don't know. So when it's going on, how do I ask the question? And then when you guys say, it's approved, then I don't even ask. This gentleman was real nice and tried to explain it to me, but, you know, I'm worried about the way it's set up. Those gas pumps and everything, 1.6 acres. Holy crap. That's a lot of stuff on 1.6 acres. Anyone else?
I get an extra 30 seconds?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. I am so thrilled that the attorney was here to chat. And I have no doubt that she's going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, go over all the shells and musts, but like Scott said, I have questions. I'm the community, and you guys may not realize it, but there are people out there that are scared to death of what's coming, and they're going to have questions. And yeah, some of them are relying on me to answer or ask those questions because I don't have the answers. But for example, the fencing and all of those things in there, we need to, I mean, if you've been up to Lennon, any of you, guess what? They had is your clock not working?
You said 30 seconds extra, so I was giving you that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if you've been up to Lennon, how did those regulations pan out for them? It's crap up there. It's horrible. Trees are on their side. So what happens if they don't do this? Apparently nothing happens unless you have it in an ordinance. So there's many questions that the public has. Rich, I sent him an email asking if the lawyer would be here tonight. Steve, I'm really hoping that I can converse with you in email because apparently that's the only way I can get an answer. So one of the
I'll give you my
things...
email after the meeting.
Pardon me?
I will give you my email. I will give you my email.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things, and just so the public knows what I'm going to ask is, will the lawyer be back again? And if she is going to be back again, I think a great solution would be have residents submit cards, maybe through email. This is a question I have. You could go through it, weed out the duplicates. If something's not appropriate or not a right question, then don't ask it. But the public has questions, and we need answers. So I would really hope that you would take that into consideration. Also, regarding the master plan, does anyone here remember the discussion? We're going to have a workshop. The public needs to have more input. It sounds like we need to kind of revisit that. We're going to, one of you even called it like another visioning session. And now we're going to jump into the public hearing. But you guys said that that was what we were going to do at the last meeting. So I have a huge problem with that. Then also, she alluded to the group Citizens for Local Choice. I really hope that you guys take a look at that because you may not agree with everything that they stand for, but they are appealing to Democrats, Republicans, Independents, everyone. We have to fight this. We have to be able to tell the state and get that ballot initiative going so that we can fight this, so that we can have our local control. We know what's best. It's 3 people on that commission that will decide for us where things go and what happens. And so I really hope that you guys, I will send you some information on them, Steve, in case you're not fully aware of what they're doing. But also, battery storage, wind ordinance. Kirk, you're the liaison with the board. How many times have I asked you, would you get that to the board? You've not been successful. Steve, can you find a way to get the board to approve that we start on the wind ordinance now, the battery ordinance also, before we get people coming in here, because we've got nothing right now, no ordinances on the battery and the wind, correct? Nobody can answer me. I'll tell you, we don't have any. So right now, a company can come in, a developer, and can come in with a proposal. You can turn it off. Thank you. Appreciate it. And again, it would have been a different story if someone had just said, yeah, the lawyer's going to be here, because many people would have loved to see her in person. But it was all held from us. And that's not right. Please don't turn out to be like the board is. It's not right. We're the people. Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else?
And thank you to the sheriff for being here. Thank you.
Anything else?
Congratulations, Steve. You've been,
Seeing nothing?
Thanks for all your service as a chairman. You did a great job.
One question, Russ, are we meeting next Wednesday then, or not?
Do you have any business items?
Doesn't sound like we did after what we had today. All right.
Nothing new, we won't have solar, right?
No workshop next week. If nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.
You did fine.
Good job, Steve.
Yeah.
I know.